Hello students, your teacher here, Mr. Sarasinski with another episode of Algebra 1. This is lesson 8.1, Introduction to Quadratics. Boom shakalaka. And we're going to start off just with standard form of a quadratic, which looks just like standard form of a trinomial. A trinomial expression, if you remember, is ax squared plus bx plus c. And this is what we've been factoring in the previous two lessons. So now we're going to take this expression and we're going to make an equation by adding the y variable. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And we're going to be doing some graphing quadratics and factoring and writing quadratics. So when we graph a quadratic, it creates a U-shaped curve called a parabola. Some people like to say parabola. It kind of sounds like Ebola, like this deadly virus, but it may help you remember it. So, word association. There are two types of parabolas. And here in this first exercise, it's saying use your graphing calculator to sketch the following. And we have two equations, y equals x squared plus 2x minus 5. And to graph these, it's asking you to go to your y equals in your graphing calculator and to put this equation into the y equals and go to the graph. And when you look at the graph, you should see something like this. So we have a vertical asymptote, and then our graph is opening up. Okay, so that should be what you see on your screen of your graph. And then if you do this other equation, y equals negative x squared plus 3x plus 7, you should see something like this. And here our graph is opening down. And so you may notice the difference in the equation, other than the numbers being different, is the sign of the first term. And this is very important. The leading coefficient to our A term, okay, our A term, affects the graph. If it's positive, it opens up. And if it's negative, it opens down. So if A is positive, and the parabola opens up like a smile. And if A is negative, then the parabola opens down like a sad frown. All right. So you heard me reference this vertical asymptote. Well, in quadratics, we call this the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. Okay. And the formula, and the axis of symmetry, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is a really important part of quadratics and graphing them. So you will need to know this, and this will translate into other lessons. The formula is x equals negative b divided by 2a. And I want to add one thing to this, that the axis of symmetry, when you calculate this, this is also the x-coordinate for the vertex. And you don't know what that means yet, but you will hear very soon. Okay. So what is the vertex? We were just referencing it. The vertex is the turning point of the parabola. So you can see in our previous examples, this little dot that is on the axis of symmetry, that is our vertex. Okay. And so you can see what it means by the turning point. The graph is going down, then it gets to the vertex, and all of a sudden it's going up. It's the turning point. When the vertex is the lowest point, it is called a minimum. So when the graph opens up, the vertex is a minimum. When the vertex is the highest point, when the graph opens down, it is called a maximum. All right, let's get into some examples here. Find the axis of symmetry and vertex, then sketch each parabola. Okay, here we go. Here's our equation, y equals x squared plus 8x plus 15. And so the first thing we're going to do is calculate the axis of symmetry. That is x equals, well, b is 8, so it's going to be negative 8. And why don't we just go ahead and list A, B, C, and 2 times A, which is 1. That's negative 8 divided by 2. That is negative 4. Okay, so x equals negative 4. And then the vertex, I have to take the x value for the vertex and plug it into the equation to see what the y value is. So y equals, let's see, we have negative 4 squared plus 8 times negative 4 plus 15. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. 8 times negative 4 is 32 plus 15. And 16 minus 32 is negative 16. Negative 16 plus 15 is negative 1. So the vertex is at negative 4, negative 1. And since A was positive, we know this graph opens up. So I'm just going to draw a rough sketch. This is my axis of symmetry. Here is my vertex at negative 4, negative 1. And my graph opens up. And it would look something like this. All right, moving on. Number 2. A equals negative 1, B equals 10, C equals negative 23. Don't really need C, but that's okay. Axis of symmetry first. X equals negative B, so that's negative 10 over 2 times A, which is negative 1. That's negative 10 divided by negative 2, which is positive 5. So our axis of symmetry is at x equals 5. And then if x equals 5, we can plug 5 in for x into our equation to find y and our vertex. So y equals 5 squared plus 10 times 5 minus 23. 5 squared is 25 times negative 1 is negative 25. 10 times 5 is 50 minus 23. This is going to end up being 2. So our vertex is at 5, 2. And since A was negative, our graph is going to open down this time. And our vertex is at 5, 2. All right. Number 3. A equals 3, B equals, B equals negative 12. Actually not going to put C this time. Axis of symmetry is x equals negative B divided by 2A. So that's x equals positive 12 divided by 2 times 3. That's 12 divided by 6, which is 2. So x equals 2 is my axis of symmetry. To find the vertex, I'm going to substitute 2 in for x and solve for y. Y equals 3 times 2 squared minus 12 times 2 plus 5. 2 squared is 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24 plus 5. This is going to be -7. Okay, so y equals -7. So the vertex is at 2, -7. Axis of symmetry is at x equals 2. The vertex is at 2, -7, and this is going to open up because A was positive. All right, number 4. A equals 4, B equals 8. Axis of symmetry is -b divided by 2a. That's -8 divided by 2 times 4. So -8 divided by 8, which is -1. And we can take -1 and plug it into our equation and solve for y. So that's y equals 4 times -1 squared plus 8 times -1 minus 1. -1 squared is +1 times 4 is 4. 8 times -1 is -8 minus 1. It's going to be -5. So our vertex is at -1, -5. Axis of symmetry is at x equals -1. Vertex is at -1, -5, and this is going to open up because A is positive. All right? Over there we had +4 as A. That means the graph opens up. All right, number 5. A equals -1, B equals -4. Axis of symmetry is -b divided by 2a. That's going to be +4 divided by 2 times -1. 4 divided by -2, and x equals -2. So our axis of symmetry is at x equals -2. Now we can find our vertex by plugging in x and solving for y. Y equals -2 squared minus 4 times -2 minus 2. -2 squared is +4 times -1 is -4. -4 times -2 is +8 minus 2. This is all going to add up to equal +2. So our vertex is at -2, +2. And since A was negative, the graph is going to open down. Okay. Number 6, A equals -3, B equals -24. Axis of symmetry is x equals -b divided by 2a, so that's going to be +24 divided by 2 times -3. That's 24 divided by -6, which is -4. So the axis of symmetry is at x equals -4. To find the vertex, we substitute x into the equation and solve for y. 3 times -4 squared minus 24 times -4 minus 42. -4 squared is +16 times -3 is -48. -24 times -4 is +96 minus 42. -48 minus 42 is -90. -90 plus 96 is 6. So the vertex is at -4, 6. And since A was -3, the graph is going to open down. And the vertex is at -4, 6. 3 more. Stay with me. A equals -1, B equals 4. There's no C this time. That's okay. So axis of symmetry, x equals -b divided by 2a. That's -4 divided by 2 times 1. -4 divided by 2, which is -2. To Find the vertex, take x, substitute it in, solve for y. Y equals negative 2 squared plus 4 times negative 2. Axis of symmetry was at x equals, x equals negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Positive 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 4 minus 8 is negative 12. So our vertex, let's see, did I do this right? Oh, I did have a mistake here. So the axis of symmetry, since A was negative 1, I didn't write that down correctly. Our axis of symmetry should have been negative 4 divided by negative 2, which is positive 2. So I have been substituting in the wrong number here. Go ahead and fix that. Okay. 2 squared is 4. All right, so the biggest difference is going to be this changing to positive 8, and our y value is going to be positive 4. So our vertex is at 2, 4. And since A was negative, this graph is going to open down. Okay, there we go. Number 8, A equals 1, B equals 0. There's no B, only a C term. So x equals negative 0 divided by 2a. Well, anytime you have 0 in a fraction, it's going to equal 0. So our axis of symmetry is 0, which is the y-axis. Okay, this is going to be the y-axis is our axis of symmetry. And then plug 0 in, and we should get negative 3, but I'll go ahead and show you. 0 squared minus 3, that's 0 minus 3, that's negative 3. Okay, so our vertex is at 0, negative 3. And since A was 1, this graph is going to open up. All right, last example, A equals negative 2, B equals 0. Just like in the last one, if B is 0, our axis of symmetry is 0. Take what x equals, substitute it in, and solve for y. That is negative 0 squared plus 8. Well, 0 squared is 0 plus 8 is 8. So our axis of symmetry is at 0, 8. And if we graph this, axis of symmetry is at 0. The graph opens down because A was negative, and the vertex was at 0, 8. I'm your teacher. This is the way.